Hello and welcome to Sasquatch Talk. Today is our first episode. You get to see us, the owners of Sasquatch Gun Oil. My name's Bradley Valentine. At the top right of your screen, you have Dan Adams, and at the bottom, you have Troy Miller. Gentlemen, what's going on? How you doing today?
Doing good. It's unseasonably cold down here in Florida.
What does that mean? 50?
I think it's like mid 40s.
Okay, all right. Well, it's supposed to be about 50 here in Colorado Springs, so not too bad.
That's what I think we're supposed to. It'll be warmer later in the afternoon, but the morning is pretty chilly.
Sure.
So I think it was down to 27 last night. My poor banana trees need help.
Well, we have the beautiful view, so we get to see us today. This is our first episode on camera. Today, we're talking political history of the United States, some of the political history of the parties, and we often go into conspiracy theories, but today we're talking a lot of facts. So follow along with us for a lot of facts. We're going to throw them out. But before we get started, just an icebreaker. It's been several weeks, so my question is, Troy, if you want to start, how is your winter going so far? How is your Christmas? How's your New Year? Tell us a little bit about what you got going on.
Honestly, it's been good. You can't complain. It's a good one. It's low key, so nothing special, no travel.
Sure.
It's just my wife and I, and now that the holiday season is behind us, I'm kind of ready to get to work,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Other than that, it's been good.
Okay, cool. Dan, what about you?
Oh man, low key was not us. I'm down here in Florida for a little while with the family. We decided to go from the Panhandle all the way down to Key West with our fifth wheel. So we drove it all. We stayed one night down in the Naples Marco Island KOA and then got to see the sunrise in the Everglades. That was pretty beautiful. And then we spent about 4 or 5 days down in the Keys. We did some snorkeling for spiny lobsters, cooked those back on the grill back at the RV, caught a couple of snappers. We did a chartered with this 31-year retired Marine. His name was Captain Hunter. He was pretty cool, pretty cool dude. But snorkeling and catching your own spiny lobsters with your hands and fishing, and then Key West, like this one dude that was camping next to us said they'll throw a party anytime someone farts. And,
any excuse.
Any excuse for a party. So there was a full moon while we were there. So I guess the first full moon of the year is the wolf moon. But people strap lights to their bikes and stuff.
Yeah.
And we rode around howling and playing loud music all over Key West at nighttime. With the kids. So all 5 of us, I just strapped some super bright LED lights to our bikes, and then we did like a night bike ride, and then we biked the whole island, went and saw Fort Zachary Taylor down there, and just explored the whole island for a couple of days, which was really cool, with some time to rest in between there and take it easy. And
sure.
Anytime I've spent a lot of time in the north of the country and experienced full winters for like 26 years or 25 years. And then in January to be sweating it out riding your bike when it's 82 degrees outside and you're swimming. And the water was 77 degrees.
Yeah.
And the thing you're worried about is getting new swim trunks. Like, it was pretty fantastic.
I bet. That sounds like a good time. I'm more on Troy's side of keeping it low key. While that does sound like a good time, Dan, I probably wouldn't enjoy it that much. I find doing a bunch of stuff not to be relaxing and stressful. I'm an introvert. My favorite place to go is home. My favorite place to visit is to come back home and relax in the quiet with only me and Carrie. And that's mostly what we did. We didn't really have much going on. Our Christmas tree, the lights broke on it halfway through through the season. I think I threw that in chat, so you guys saw that. But we just relaxed and we had some time off, and we like to go for car rides in the mountains and such. But other than that, stayed at home. So that's what we did this Christmas. Let's get started. Troy, I'm going to throw this to you. I have a question for you, Troy. We kind of got into
Okay.
this a little bit last week, and I want to start in the 19th century of the United States. If at least when we grew up, right? We're millennials from the 80s and early 90s. And what I was taught a lot, or what I heard a lot, was that there's always like these two parties. One was on the civil rights side, one was on like the government side of like making sure that like we're conformed to the government. Here's my thoughts, Troy. Tell me a little bit about the Civil War and the history of the Civil War. You talked about this a little bit. Who was on what side? Tell me about Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis. I want to hear your thoughts on this conversation, Troy, and then we'll move to you, Dan. Interject when you have some thoughts. So what are you thinking regarding this?
It's funny. I had this thought when we talked about the subject the last time. I don't remember really in high school them teaching a lot about the Civil War. Yeah, they touched upon it, may have mentioned how many people were killed and the South seceded, but they never went into political parties.
Sure.
They said that the North was Union, the South was pro-slavery.
Yeah.
But they never went into the political parties and how the country was. And they didn't spend a lot of time on the Civil War in general. Most of what I've learned about the Civil War has been what I've read about
Sure.
since our last subject. And you it kind of opens up your eyes as to what the realities were. That the pro-Southern slavery states were actually democratic,
Right.
and the Union. So, like Tim Waltz, I'm sure you guys heard him make this comment about Minnesota helped support the Civil War, this and that. Well, at the times, Minnesota was a Republican state that was anti-slavery, and they weren't even democratic, which is anyways. So it's that learning that was actually eye-opening, and to learn that, it was just learning the differences of where the political parties laid.
Sure. And, I'll build off of that a little bit and throw it to you, Dan. The Republican Party, and Dan, you have a chart, I'll put it up on the screen, but the Republican Party was new to the era during the Civil War. I think it was 1854, the Republican Party, right around the 1850s, formed. Yeah. The Republicans essentially formed because they were anti-slavery, pro-freedom, and the Democrats were pro-slavery. They wanted to keep slavery in the United States, led by Jefferson Davis. So, Dan, I know that you showed us this chart, which I'm going to throw up on screen for everyone to look at. What have you learned, or what are some of your thoughts of the political parties of the United States? And let's think about the mid 1800s right now.
Yeah. So it was when I think back to high school history and even like maybe as far back as like 6th to 8th grade, they really tried to talk about it, and like talk about how we were one party for like a couple of years in the early like 1820s, like the late 18 teens to the late 1820s. And one thing that really stands out to me, let me talk about both your points.
Okay.
High school, they talk about the Whigs and they cover a lot of different things, but it would have been really cool to have this chart to understand, right?
Sure.
And like you think about it now, and for me, and maybe everybody else is a little different, but you think of like parties if you're sitting in a classroom of 50 students, right? Some of you want to get out early and go play on the playground. There's a couple of people that want to learn what's going on in the class. Right. Other people, just want to get to lunch. And like you have all these different ideas that everybody's worried about in this time frame, right? In a given class period, So I think about that because I had a teacher that used that scenario to describe it to us. He said everybody gets wound up on certain political viewpoints and should we pass this bill or not pass this bill, instead of looking at how we got there and what's going to happen after. What does post passing this bill look like? There's a lot of, because it's swaying, you want to get people on your side. So they just talk about the bill. They move your focus to the one thing so they can either get it passed or get it knocked down, instead of keeping us unified as a people, right? And that's the biggest thing that stands out to me with all these different political parties and fractions and factions and things that split off, is that what I see is it's a way to divide everyone so that the control is not the majority of the people, which is where it was actually intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a big proponent for less government and more people.
Right.
Like, you know, you don't want your neighbor telling you where to put your trash cans, right? You want to put your trash cans where it's easy for you to get to them.
Sure.
And I use that because, you know, you can see people get heated about, just a quick YouTube search of people fighting about trash cans all over the place because they're stinky, they're unsightly, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if you have some money, you could pay somebody to take care of your trash for you, you know, but if you don't have money, you got to put them where it's easiest for you to get to so you can get to work to make money to feed yourself or your family.
Okay.
And I think that's the sight picture that gets lost in this, you know, Republicans they're just for Trump and they just want to make money and get corporate greed, you know, capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, they like to assimilate Trump supporters with people that would impose their will on you.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of saying, like, looking at the history and going back. And people like, I get this all the time. Oh, that's not what that word means now. And I'm like, that doesn't change the definition of it.
Right.
You know, like, just because you use it wrongly doesn't mean that that's not what the word means.
Right.
You know, so using these political parties, I just see it as a big divisive factor. As a matter of fact, going into this, I did like the smallest amount of research I've done on any of our topics, just because I wanted to come into it to speak from my point that I already had, because we all, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, have a bias, right, from our own point of view. And if we could just look at it from that 8th grade or that, you know, freshman standpoint of like, what is the reality of the political party? And then what happens when you align yourself with one of those political parties?
I think I like where you're going in, you know, going to a high school in the suburbs of Chicago. Everyone, for me at least, everyone was the same kind of way. Like my teachers taught that like Republicans were bad and greedy and for the rich, and the Democrats were the nice guys and they were for the people. And I think we're starting to like try to build a story here of what the history is. And maybe things have changed. We'll get into that. But Dan, like you said, just because the way it is now has changed from the way it was before, like the history is still important. And if we go back to the Civil War, we see one party, the Democratic Party, was pro-slavery. One party, the Republican Party, was pro-abolition. So let's build from there, because this is important that we go from there, because we still have like the history of the South, Jim Crow laws, which was a terrible system, as we know. Like once slaves were freed, they still had the Jim Crow laws, and they still stuck in the South. So I kind of want to move us, Troy, I'll jump to you, to the early 20th century. I've talked about him before, Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge is one of my, if not my favorite president. And I was actually talking to a friend a couple months ago when I was telling him about Calvin Coolidge. He quickly Googled him, and he was like, "Wow, for a Republican, he was pretty progressive. He was for like women's rights to votes. He introduced in 1914 the he didn't introduce in 1914, what was it? The Indian Citizenship Act. He made sure that American Indians, Native Americans, were actually part of the United States. And in his mind, he's been taught that Republican equals racism. So it was a surprise to him.
Your friend was taught that.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And
a
honestly,
lot of people are taught that.
I kind of was taught that too, until you actually learn. And you can say it as much as you want. So I want to go to the early 20th century, Troy. This is right around World War I times. This is one of my favorite time periods to study, is World War I, post World War I, the booming 1920s. But if we look at the growth of the parties in politics in the 1910s and the 1920s, what is some of your knowledge of what was going on in the world, like major world events? And we'll build upon that, Troy. So kind of give us some of the knowledge of the world during that time.
Well, so the elephant in the room, you mentioned World War I. There was also the Great Depression right afterwards too. And that, who was the president then? So it started in 1929.
FDR was the main president over that. And who was right after Calvin Coolidge? What was his name? Herbert Hoover, was it?
Hoover, the Hoover Dam, because that's what a lot of the government projects that they had started across the country was to help with the economy during the Great Depression, create jobs. As far as those political parties, that was kind of an interesting time where of course you had the differences between the two the parties, but it didn't seem as divisive as it has been during the 1800s or even today. I think that was one of the times where both the Republicans and the Democrats were able to get behind each other and support each other and work with each other in government and get stuff done. Of course, when a war starts, you kind of have to become a national, if you will. Sure. And they were forced to stand up for their country during World War II, which ultimately helped with the Great Depression. Compared to the Civil Rights Acts of the 1950s, 1960s, and even during the Civil War, it wasn't as divisive.
I want to get to a point that you said it wasn't as divisive. There was a very divisive point, and Dan, feel free to jump off on this. It was the introduction of the income tax. The introduction of the income tax was a huge thing that the Republicans were often opposed to the income tax. The Democrats were very much for the income tax.
Right.
And in my mind, the number one core tenet of being a Democrat today is rich man bad. Whatever you do, that's number one on the list. The rich man is the bad man, and you cannot go off those talking points. Number two is probably abortion rights. But number one, rich man bad, don't go off of that. And this started in the 1910s, in the early 20th century, when the introduction of the income tax, they realized they could win a lot of people, because most people aren't rich, and become a populist party by saying, let's make the rich man bad. Let's
to that point, Brad. That is really close to the Depression.
Yes.
So when that was going on, we all have to understand that. What was it? 70% of Americans were living on 4 cents a day.
Yeah.
And that was, you were doing okay.
Yeah.
If you had that.
And do you remember?
So that's how they pushed that agenda with the rich man bad, because of the Depression. And people forget about Hoover flags. Hoover was a Democrat, wasn't he?
Hoover was a Republican, I think.
Was he?
Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover was right after
Coolidge.
Yeah, Coolidge. He was a Republican, right?
I don't know. I have to look.
If you remember, Bradley, when they introduced that income tax, what was it what was the percentage? What was the tax rate set at?
Compared
to what it is today.
It started off at like 1.5%, and it was only for the richest of rich.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it got to, in the 1910s, and real quick on our fact checking here, Herbert Hoover was a Republican. Really quickly, Woodrow Wilson in the 1910s skyrocketed that tax, and Calvin Coolidge brought it down from like the 60s and 80s% of income tax. And that's why before the Great Depression, there was a huge boom in the U.S. economy, was we lowered the income
the roaring
tax
20s
from like the 80s and 70s and 60s% to top percentage was like 40, 45, which is still extremely high, but it allowed that money to flow. And guess what? The economy boomed. But
it flourished,
we saw Calvin Coolidge. After that was Herbert Hoover. And then we saw FDR, which is, Dan, to go to your point, I'll let you go on the Great Depression. The Great Depression changed this country forever. And I'll get into my main points, but Dan, I'll let you go from there.
I think you kind of touched on my point, which is perfectly fine. But if you want to sway some people, the way to do it is to scare the crap out of them.
Yeah.
And then make sure they don't have enough money to survive, and then they'll look to you to get what they need to survive. And that's really how the Democratic Party grew, is because they wanted everyone to depend on them.
Yeah.
I want a country full of independent people.
Sure.
Not dependent people. I'm trying to raise my kids to be independent, right? So that they can sustain for themselves and then look around and hopefully help the people that are on either side of them, right? So that way they can help create more independent people, not dependent people.
So I like what you're saying, and I want to jump to today. You guys know who Zoran Mandami, the new mayor of New York, is?
Right.
So for those who don't know, he just got inaugurated as the mayor of New York. He's a self-proclaimed Muslim socialist Democrat, whatever that means. And during his speech, he said, "We want to get rid of the, quote, the frigidity of rugged individualism and replace it with the warmth of collectivism," which is essentially the antithesis of what you just said, Dan. And
yes,
it's funny because it's like we don't learn in history, right? Like, we've tried socialism before, we've tried communism before. Two things happen: the economic structure fails, and millions of people get murdered.
What always happens is, as long as you have more friends and more friends willing to die for you, you'll do all right. But you're gonna have to build a staircase of bodies.
I like that. Okay, let's go back to our time frame. Let's move to the 1930s with the Depression. This is after Herbert Hoover, who was seen as a failure because he kind of let the Depression happen. We got FDR, right? So we moved like political parties from from Republican to Democrat, and which makes sense, right? Like, if you're an American voter, you're like, unemployment rate's 20% under this guy, I'm going for the other guy. Fair enough, right? Now, a lot of current economic history shows that if FDR didn't do what he did, we could have been out of the Depression 5 years earlier. Essentially, like what you said, Troy, World War II boosted us out of the Depression. So we had major deflation, and I've talked about this before on Freedom Finances, but this is the history in the 1930s of the Democratic Party. We had major deflation where the federal government would go to farms, and there was so much product, so much supply, that it was worth so little. They were trying to reduce the supply to increase the value of selling it. They would say, "We'll pay you, farmer." So, Troy, let's say you're a farmer who makes potatoes. They would say, "We'll pay you this lump sum of money, but you have to reduce your supply." So what they would do is they would poison the potatoes with ink sacs, and they would have to go and confirm it to reduce the supply. Dan, let's say you're a pig farmer, and this actually happened.
I know.
They slaughtered, I think, something like 50 million piglets to make sure that the supply of pork increased, right?
Was low.
These were some of the things that we wouldn't...
Let's correct that. They did that to make sure the supply was low.
So yes, the supply was too high, which means the price was low, which means it didn't really matter to people.
Yeah, I only got one piglet left, and there's 10 of you that want one. Well, the highest bidder gets it.
Exactly. Yeah. and it's kind of a weird piece in our history. It's like we don't understand what's going on. If we jump to World War II, and I'll let you jump in, does anyone remember about learning about Japanese internment camps?
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived by one in Oregon.
Tell me about
it. Here in Klamath, near Klamath, Tule Lake.
Yep.
Yeah. They had two facilities there.
Yeah. Yeah, so they made them, if you were Japanese or Japanese looking.
Yeah.
Or happen to live next to a Japanese guy, they would take you and him, and make you live in this house that you then had to build,
right?
And then you had to work for free and harvest potatoes or whatever, sure. And then the highest paid people were the guards, who had to be willing to shoot those people should they try to run off.
And who was the president under that time, Troy? Do you know?
Oh, that was Roosevelt.
Yeah. What party was
Democrat.
he under?
Democrat. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna get us canceled.
Listen, I'm building a history.
I'm all for it.
I want to build a case for people to understand that things aren't as they originally thought. That's all we're about in Sasquatch Talk.
Right.
Is we're opening minds here. So we started off in 1860, and my point is, like, let's say you talk to someone and you're like, well, that's almost 200 years ago, right? Who cares? Well, now we're getting into the 1940s. People are still alive today that experience this. This is a systematic case against what people think of our political system. We'll go into more, but that's where I'm at, Dan. So check me. So far in my case, systematically, let's say this is
a legal case. We need a tally board, you know? Like we're playing darts and we're keeping track with hash marks. It's not looking so good.
Yeah. Okay. So, Troy, you brought up the Civil Rights Act and starting in the 1950s and passing in 1964. I have some, again, more actual data. The votes of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. This is the House votes. And Troy, I'll let you throw out your opinions. So 1964 is not only like, well, it's not World War II, old 100-year-old men in a wheelchair getting rolled out in front of people. These are like our parents' age.
This is the tail end of Vietnam.
Yeah.
Right.
So these are the votes for and against the Civil Rights Act, which essentially is the major act that shows today that it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, you have all the same rights, right? This was the final one that essentially pushed us into the modern age. There were 152 votes of yay from the Democrats, 96 nay from the Democrats. Republicans, 138 yay, 34 nay. So we have almost 3 times more in the House from Democrats. This is from the Senate cloture vote in 1964, 71-21, but 23 of the nays came from the Democrats, 6 came from the Republicans. Dan, you talked about how you were like, when did this shift happen? This is a major shift of Southern Democrats losing because Democrats decided racism doesn't work to win votes anymore. So I'll go to you, Troy, and then I'll go to... Sorry, go ahead, Dan. Dan, and then pass it back to Troy. Tell me what you're thinking.
Okay. Well, this subject came up in my work center, which I almost got in trouble for. When Joe Biden was the president, and there was a guy that was pro-Joe Biden. I was like, well, if you're pro-Joe Biden, then you think that we should go back to having separate water fountains. And he was like,
speechless.
Yeah. And they were like, we have, you can't say things like that. And I'm like, what, historical things? What things can I say? Different water fountains?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, if you look back, I said, Joe Biden's been in politics for over 50 years. And 40 years ago, he voted to not to keep schools segregated in the South. Like, even though we were supposed to be fully integrated as a country, that didn't happen till the late 70s, mid to late 70s, I think. I was talking to my grandma the other day when she was with her husband down near Pensacola. She got in trouble. She got a ticket for drinking out of the blacks only water fountain. And, she's still alive.
Yeah.
That was 60 years ago.
Yeah.
So to make my point even more, like, it's not just at that time. It continues forward, and it convolutes our thinking going ahead. I can't imagine being in that time where just because you look different, just because your skin is a different shade, means you do less things, right? And I don't claim to be 100% Republican or 100% Democrat, even though we both grew up on the south side of Chicago in very different places. We know that, like, there's lots of things to talk about there, but I'm going to get too far from our point. Anyways, just that not very long ago, current presidents, the last president was voting to keep segregation happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Troy, what are you thinking?
So you were talking about that shift, Bradley. That was a major shift. And you're right, but the Southern Democrats, when they shifted from being Democratic to what is mostly Republican today, look at their economy. Look at how much it's grown and flourished for those Southern states' economies since that shift. Like, you could have an argument that they are much stronger economies at the state level than they were when they were in the Democrat realm, with the Democrat leadership.
I mean, the old Democratic Party for the economy in the 19th century was essentially based on, not paid workers, aka slavery,
slaves,
upholding
unpaid
the
compensation.
And then once that was gone, and they still had Democratic leadership, they failed a lot, right? Jim Crow laws failed a lot. To build on the story a little bit, we have George Wallace. We've all probably heard this story. In 1963, George Wallace, who was the Alabama governor, stood in front of one of the schools during integration and wouldn't let a black girl come in, right? What we're probably not taught is that George Wallace was a Democrat along with other governors, including Democrat Arkansas governor in 1957, who did the same thing. And the Republican Dwight Eisenhower sent in the National Guard to force the integration to happen. This isn't something that is just new and it flipped. So here's one thing that did happen, and I've been trying to find this. Dan, a couple weeks ago, you said, at what point did everyone start thinking that Republicans were racist, right? That Democrats were the good guy, Republicans were the bad guy. Well, I've kind of figured it out. Essentially what happened was the Democrats lost the Civil Rights Act. And while in majority they did vote for the Civil Rights Act, Republicans were much more for it, but Democrats were more in charge. And they realized, like, this old party doesn't work anymore, essentially. So essentially what happened, it's like if me and you, Troy, were on one side and Dan was on the other side, and racism was a big part of our clan, and it didn't work and we didn't get elected. So we started saying, we're not racist, Dan's actually the one who's racist. And that's
rebranded.
They rebranded, and they literally tried to change history. There's no evidence that one party the Republican Party has been that way. There's only evidence that within the last 60 years, the Democratic Party had to rebrand. But what has happened all along, as the Democrat has kept the rich are bad, the rich man is bad, and guess what? You can always win everyone with that platform because the majority of people aren't rich, right? So you can always win everyone. So that's the kind of the end of my case against our misunderstanding of American political history. I'll throw it to you, Dan. What are you thinking?
I had a conversation somewhat recently. I was talking to someone about the National Guard being sent in, right? And this ties in very much to your point with him sending the National Guard in to allow those kids to go to school, right?
Yeah.
Well, someone was mad that the National Guard was going to be sent in Illinois to a town. And I said, well, what's wrong with it, right? I said, would you live in that town? No. I said, okay. Would you live in that town 40 years ago when the National Guard, or 60 years, 50 years ago when the National Guard was sent in the first time to that same town?
Sure.
No, it's bad. And I'm like, okay, so what would you do to fix the situation? Well, I'd tell the community leaders to, help out. I'm like, okay, they did that before they sent them in the first time, 10 years before.
Yeah.
Didn't work out. So they sent in people with guns to quench, like they burnt down 40 city blocks. That's a lot. So let me see here. They sent the National Guard in to stop rioting and to stop things from being burnt down. And it worked. People stopped burning things down. Okay. Here we are 40, 50 years later.
Yeah.
Right? We have people burning things down and telling the political leaders and the community leaders and, the governments and the police, hey, it's not good here. Nobody wants to live here. It's kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, oh, yeah, okay. But we're going to send, President Trump wants to send in the National Guard. Now, let me say, I'm not his biggest supporter. He's my boss. I got to listen to him. Same thing with Joe Biden, right? But I do like to say, hey, let's look at what's going right. Let's look at what's going wrong, then make our determination, right? Wanted to send the National Guard in to fix a problem area.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't get the people to stop burning crap down, what do? Give them more lighters? I don't know. Like
gasoline.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so you have to stop. Like when you have kids and they're getting out of control, people are like, oh, don't yell at your kids. And you're like, oh, so just let them run in the street? No, cars kill people when they hit you.
Yeah.
Right. So you go, okay, hey, don't run in the street. Like, hey, stop burning everything down.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so to really round out this point, like these two presidents were at the time, getting everything, if we look at all of it, doing nothing doesn't change anything, but doing something does. And if you look through the history of the Republican Party, they're like, hey, that's not working. Let's do this. Right.
Yeah.
And then, slavery wasn't working. Well, it was working for some people, but not everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really what the goal has been of the Republican Party is less government overreach.
Sure.
And more like, hey, we're all in this together. Let's get along and see where we can get this ship to go. Instead of just spinning around in circles and cutting the sails down and hoping the waves will wash us ashore.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see it. But go ahead, Troy.
Troy.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, usually doing nothing is oftentimes worse, and you get a worse outcome than trying something, even if that something isn't the best either.
Right.
Doing nothing is always the worst condition. And Brady, you had mentioned the Democrats were teaching for years, tax the rich are bad, right?
Yeah.
Hold on, I got to move the shade. It's in my eyes.
You can keep talking while that's happening.
Yeah. So that's in the wrong spot. Maybe I'll move my chair. Tax the rich, right? Rich bad. Well, what does that say about the people who do absolutely nothing? Like those people who are rich for a reason, right?
Yeah.
They did something to get that money, and usually those people, what they did, people traded in their money for it.
Yeah.
Right. So that means some people benefited from it. What about the people that are sitting on the streets doing nothing? How is that good? If taxing if rich bad, that means poor good, or poverty good,
right? Yeah.
You know, and so I that rich bad thing rings hollow with me. Yeah, there's people with a lot of money,
right?
But take Jeff Bezos for example, right? Amazon. Do you know what his net worth is currently?
What, like 150 billion?
Yeah, something. We'll go with that number. But you know how many people use Amazon around the world?
Everyone every day.
Exactly. And so literally everyone every day is trading in their money for whatever item to be shipped to their house. And now they're introducing medical, and they've got Amazon Studios and all of this coming down. And how is that bad?
Yeah. That's a good point. One thing today, okay, I'm going to close us with a modern day argument, because I kind of ended in the 1960s, especially when it came to race relations. Because essentially, once the 1960s happened, as a society, at least in the United States, we realized, like, okay, what are we, the melting pot, whatever. We've decided we're kind of like, racism isn't cool anymore, right? Essentially. and like, as generations grew up, we were less and less racist, and it's not a common thing. It still happens. It's not a common thing, but people think today one major complaint about the United States is our healthcare system and how expensive you go to the hospital or to get your prescriptions, especially within the last 15 years. It's gotten really, really expensive. We know what happened around 15 years ago. Do either of you know what happened?
Obamacare.
The supposed pro little guy thing skyrocketed prices. Why?
Yep.
Because they made the insurance company and the medical company a high priority. They forced them to be a big dog. In the economic system, when you make someone the big dog makes the money. I don't know if anyone needs a reminder, but he wasn't a Republican who made that system. And one major complaint is that our system for healthcare is expensive, and it's skyrocketed. You could look at charts, I could throw them up, over the last 10 to 15 years. Since then, there's been one Affordable Care Act that was passed by a Democratic president and Democratic Congress, and it's kind of hurt so we want to think that the Democrats are for the little guy. Think what you want.
No,
we made a political history. We're almost out of time. Dan, give your last thoughts, and then I'll throw it to you, Troy.
Anybody that's listening to this, it would be great if you could take that classroom idea and think about that, and think about the people that live on either side of you, and if you'd rather fight them or live in a world where you help each other.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. I don't want to walk out my front door knowing I'm going to have to fist fight every day. I'm not a small dude.
Yeah.
You know how exhausting that would be too. Every single day. All right, who am I going to fight with today?
There's folks out there that want to live in that world.
I know there is. That's exhausting.
But I'm saying, for me, I'd rather walk out and enjoy the sunshine, and have to worry about, picking chili peppers out of the garden and feeding chickens and, making stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't that peace? That's called peace, right? Peace instead of conflict.
Some people don't want to hear my hammering at 8 a.m. Like,
that would drive me nuts. I'll be honest.
Right. See, we would have to live farther apart.
Troy,
that's my point. Everybody's got a different viewpoint.
I get it. Troy, I'll pass it to you. But before, Troy, tell us what you're doing, because you do this during our podcast. And now that we're on video, it's kind of a cool thing to integrate into our video. You want to show us what you're doing and tell us, because you're going to keep doing this for our podcast. It kind of goes on brand for us.
Yeah, as long as I have dirty guns. But yeah, I'm just cleaning my guns. I have. So that was a slide of a 1911. This is the frame. I'm just taking the dirty guns that I do have and cleaning them. Using, of course, Sasquatch gun oil. Can you see that? Yeah. So, and I've been two guns in. I have a AR style, right? And it's like this, right? And then I have that 1911 I was showing you. So I'm two guns in. My hands are not really all that dirty, even though they were pretty dirty guns. That bolt carrier group was black. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing.
When I clean guns with that, like I get like diesel staining in my fingerprints, and after using our gun oil to clean guns, it lifts all that stuff even out of my fingerprints.
It almost cleans your hands a little bit.
It does. I all the mechanics I come across selling them guns, I look at their hands and they're just like what you said, Dan. They're filled, they're black, all the cracks, and even that soap that they use doesn't work. I'll put a couple drops on their fingers and they'll rub it together and
rub it on a cloth and it'll lift it. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It liquidizes it. It takes it right off, and it makes your skin feel better too. Like it doesn't destroy your skin afterwards. And so you see a lot of people clean guns with latex gloves on or rubber gloves just because the oil is bad. And I don't do that with this glove. With this oil.
Well, thanks for sharing us a little bit what you're doing. And it is our brand, Sasquatch Gun Oil. We all use it. It does work, and it's why we're here, is because we built this brand. But we're also three guys who like to talk about this kind of stuff. And I'll say today, like, I did make a case. My case wasn't against, like, if you're a Democratic voter, it's not against you. My case was to make a case that the history that you have probably been taught is not what you think, right? The history of the world is, like, usually tyranny, violence, whatever, right? And unfortunately, even if you've been taught it, the Democrats are part of the history of the world. Now, Dan, you say this all the time. It doesn't mean that the Republicans are the best. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying go vote for Donald Trump or go vote for the Republicans. What I am saying is, don't tell us that the history is different than it actually was, because we have a systematic case that what we've learned in the past, what we know today, isn't what we think. So that was my point overall. And that's about all we have time. We're about to end it here. Thanks for watching. SasquatchGunOil.org. Go get yours. Great to clean. And it's not just good for cleaning guns, but Dan, you've used it around your house as well before, right?
Yeah, the hinges, like hinges on doors, things that squeak. To that point, there's a lot of guys that clean their guns in the garage or downstairs where it doesn't stink it up. It doesn't stink everything up. You can clean it at the table, and that's one nice thing about it. I'll say this, for a long time being in the military, I used CLP, break free, and that stuff it has an unmistakable odor. There's a lot of guys that we talk to at gun shows that are like, well, that's just how it smells.
Yeah,
that's what it is. And I'm like, well, you're right. And what I learned though using our product is that it worked okay. You do a lot more scrubbing with that CLP stuff, but when you use ours, it clears all that up.
Yep.
You don't have to scrub nearly as much.
That CLP, it just smears the carbon around on the gun. It doesn't actually remove it. It just it might lubricate it a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the guys that I gave a bottle to a guy that I work with. He was like, "Oh, I only use Hops 9. That's what my grandpa used." And I was like, I understand that. I'm just saying, try this, and then let me know what you think. And he came back. He's like, I thought it was clean. I used ours.
Yeah.
And he used he used the same rag. He's like, I didn't know it could function that smooth. I'm like,
do you know Hops 9 is not today what it is not what it was. Like he said, his grandpa.
It doesn't go straight to your liver anymore. It hits a few other organs on the way.
Well, but not just that though. Like California passed these may cause cancer laws in the 80s, and because they were out of California, they had to change up their entire recipe to get rid of certain chemicals that they were using.
That's a Republican state, California, where they restricted everything.
Exactly.
Oh no, it's a Democratic state. Weird. That's wild.
But that's what I'm saying is hops today is not what it was when his grandpa was using it. It is not nearly as effective as it was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, Hodgson also used to be made in a semi-trailer in the middle of a cornfield. So it was repackaged mill surf gunpowder.
All right.
So.
We are officially out of time. That was a little bit of our political history. I know we took a long break over Christmas, but we'll be back a lot sooner for the next time. This is us from Sasquatch Gun Oil and Sasquatch Talk. Adios.
Bye.